So basically what I'm going to be talking about is sort of the nitty-gritty of the job search. I'm going to be talking about some of the actual strategies you guys will be using when you're looking for a job, no matter what the industry is, no matter what the position is. So we're going to actually go in and, Ken was talking about, what are some of the ideas you want to have going into this search as far as how to find a job. I'm going to go in and talk about the actual strategies that you guys can use. So ignore that note. So just to introduce myself, my name is Reggie Johnson. I'm a career services library assistant here. Basically, I work with Steinbright as well as the library to develop and manage and organize some career resources that students and alumni can use when they're looking for a job. As with Ken, if you guys have any questions after this presentation, I'd be more than happy to meet with you. You can definitely shoot me an email, give me a call or something like that. My contact information is up on the screen. And I believe this presentation is going to be available to you guys online at another meeting. So definitely don't hesitate to reach out to me. One thing that I will note is that most of the stuff that I'm going to be showing you and I'm going to be talking about can be found on my reference page, which is this URL that's up on the screen. So a lot of the stuff I'm going to mention you can find there. And I definitely recommend that you at least stop by that site, see what's there, see what's going to be helpful, and hopefully take advantage of some of the resources that are available. All right. So what I'm going to first talk about are what resources we have and what you guys can take advantage of that Drexel has access to. Obviously, I wouldn't be working in a library if I didn't have some sort of books to maintain and some collection to worry about. There is actually a print careers collection. And it's, if you guys have been in the library, it's on the main floor, kind of in that back far right corner past the printers. That's the careers collection, and that is devoted specifically to job search, to career development, to really anything on helping you find your ideal job, your ideal career. And the books in this collection range really from some of the more general stuff as far as resume reviews and interview help to industry-specific information. So if you want to learn about biotechnology, what is the industry like? How can you get a job in engineering? How can you get a job breakthrough as a business analyst? We have books on those topics, so you can definitely go ahead and check those out. If you want to see what we have available to you, probably the easiest thing that you can do, the easiest way to find them, is by going into the library's homepage and going to the advanced search. In the advanced search, there's actually going to be under location a place where you can select the career collection. So that way you can search just that collection and not really have to sort through all of the other books that you might find throughout the library that may not be relevant. In addition to the print collection, there's actually a ton of electronic and web resources that we have access to. Most of them can be found on this page, which is my reference page, which I mentioned before. And on here, there's a ton of different things. If you have a quick question, I have a sort of a chat function, which sometimes shows up on the page, sometimes it doesn't. But there's also information, there's a bunch of databases, I'm going to talk about a few of those. There's a number of career guides, and these range from, once again, sort of job analysts, things that apply to any job, things like general job search, resume writing, cover letter writing, stuff like that, as well as industry-specific guides. So there's a ton of stuff here. I definitely recommend you guys at least check them out, see what's there, see what might be helpful, see what maybe you already know, and what you don't know. Alright, so those are basically the two main groups of resources, the types of resources that we have. What I'm going to talk about now is the actual process of how to look for a job and how to use those resources to help you in this search. Probably one of the most important things you guys can do, which is a lot easier for you guys as graduate students than it is maybe for undergrads, but it's still going to be helpful, is to define exactly what it is that you're looking for. Going in and looking for any job that's relevant to engineering might open yourselves up to a bunch of opportunities, but you're going to be wading through a lot of job postings. You're going to be looking at a lot of companies, you're going to be doing a lot of informational interviews because there's a ton of things out there for you to look at. By narrowing things down, you can focus your energies on certain areas. This can really help you, like I said, make sure that you're being efficient with your job search, that you're not wasting time talking to people that aren't going to be helpful. Basically, what you can do is you can develop answers to the 3 questions that are up on the screen. So, what type of job do I want? What are the responsibilities, basically, that I want to have in this position? What industry do I want to work in? Working in the public sector versus the private sector, or nonprofit and for-profit. You could have the same position in those different areas, but because of the industry, your experience is going to be very different. So it's very helpful to understand what is the industry that I want to be in, what are the things I want to do. And also, pretty important, where do you want to be working? If you find an ideal job that's in a place that you're not happy with, you might as well have just found a bad job in a good place. So it's also important to figure out what are the locations that I'd be happy with, that I'd be able to enjoy without being too stressed out. And kind of to echo what Ken said, if you have a question, you want to learn more about certain industries, you want to learn more about certain positions, conduct informational interviews. They're really the best way to learn directly from those people about what they do on a daily basis. You can also talk to a career counselor like Ken. So, they're fantastic and they can talk you through a bunch of different things. They have other assessments. But like I said, most of you guys, I have a feeling, are pretty focused and pretty good where you're going. One of the great databases that we have access to is this Vault Career Insight. And it probably should be a one-stop shop for all of you, no matter what you're searching for, no matter where you are in your job search. Excuse me. Because it has information on really anything that you would want to know. They have information, they have industry guides, company guides, they have information on professions, so you can actually learn about what people do in certain professions, certain jobs. They have career advice sections. They just have a ton of stuff. They have salary information. They have an actual job board there. So it's a great place for you guys to at least get familiar with, create an account, and be able to access. One of the things they actually have are, among everything else, is they have a couple blogs that sort of talk about what people in certain industries do. So, for example, they have it's called A Day in the Life. I believe they have, it's either an occupation profile or first person. They recently changed a few things, but it's basically they have a few options there where you can go in and professionals will actually give their name, their title, and their company and talk about what they do on a daily basis. So it's a great way for you to almost get that informational interview information without having to actually contact someone. There's other benefits to informational interviews than just getting the information, but it's a good place to at least get started, become familiar with it. All right, so once you've figured out what you want to do, where you want to be, then you can start preparing yourself. And this is really making sure that you're ready to take advantage of any opportunities that come up. This means making sure that your resume or CV is up to date, or if you don't have one already, that it's created, that it has relevant information, that it's well edited, so you can send it out without having to worry about what anyone's going to say, without having to worry about any mistakes you may have. It's also important to develop what's called a 30-second commercial. How many of you guys are familiar with a 30-second commercial? Most of you? All right. Does everyone know what an elevator speech is? Is that any better? They're basically the same thing. It's basically a way for you to introduce yourself to a potential employer. So this is very helpful, usually as your answer to the first question of an interview when they ask you to tell you a little bit about themselves or ask you to tell them a little bit about yourself. It's also really helpful when you go to a career fair. This is sort of your first introduction. It's where you say who you are, what you're looking for, what skills you have, how you feel that you can fit in with that company. And Andy's going to talk about that a little bit later. But that's also something to make sure that you develop, make sure you have everything ready to go. Cover letters are also important to at least start considering. Now, cover letters should be specific to the position that you're applying for. So even if you're applying to 2 positions within the same company, you should still have 2 separate cover letters. However, it wouldn't be a bad idea to at least get started on creating a template to figure out roughly what you want to say, what you want to share with an employer, so that way you're not having to rewrite everything over and over again. But at least having that template can help you in your search. And it's also important to sort of see what resources are going on in Steinberg might be hosting, or GSA, or your department, to just get a sense of what other options might be out there. If you need help with getting your resume or CV up to date, ready to go, we have some resources. There's a resume writing career guide, which has a ton of great information. There's also probably the majority of the career collection is just resume and CV writing books. So there's a ton of stuff here to help you if you guys need some help. Cover letters are also vital. A lot of people don't put as much into them as they would, say, a resume. Usually the resume is sort of the glamour child of the job search world. They get all the attention. Cover letters is sort of the redheaded stepchild. But they're really important because, first of all, they're usually the first place where you can communicate with an employer. They get to see your good communication skills. So they get to see who you are as a writer, and they sort of get a sense for whether your writing skills, your talent, whether that fits with them or not. It's also a great place for you to explain some things. Maybe you have a gap in your employment, or maybe there's something missing on your CV, or maybe you have experience in another field and you're trying to get a position in a new one. This is where your cover letter can come in and say that, yes, maybe I don't have the experience that you're asking for, I don't have the exact certifications you're asking for, but I have the skills that I've developed in these other fields, doing these other projects, that make me very applicable, that make me a good candidate for the position, and I know that I can do the job just as well as someone else. So basically you want to think about your cover letter as the bridge between what your resume says about you and what the job description is asking. And so what you can just do is you can tie in what you do, what you have, what skills you have, the experiences, into how you can be a good fit for that position. And we also have a bunch of resources on how to write a cover letter, and how to sort of work that out, and a bunch of templates, I think, as well. Now we're going to talk about probably one of the most important things in your job search. Once you've figured out what you want to do, you've prepared yourself, now you can actually start searching for companies and doing some research on those companies that you might be interested in. A lot of times, as Ken mentioned, companies may not even post their positions. Or even if they do, there might be more that they're also considering. So it's really important to not just look for jobs, but to look for the companies that you would want to work for and reach out to them directly. First of all, it shows initiative. It shows that you're really interested, you're enthusiastic about joining their team, so that's always a plus. But also you can put yourself into consideration for the jobs in the hidden job market. So it's never a bad idea to reach out to a company to learn a little bit more about it. And there's a bunch of different ways you can find these companies, you can learn about what they do. Obviously, the first one and most obvious is just to look on the company's website. It's there, it's free information, you don't have to work for it, so just take it. It's right there, it's an easy step for you to go and grab. If you want to find some companies, you can obviously, you can look at some print company directories, that'll be helpful. Use your network or speak with alumni. See where people who have graduated from your program have gotten jobs, and then try to reach out to them. Where are Drexel graduates going? That can also give you a good idea. And there are also a bunch of electronic company databases. We're going to talk about a few of those. D&B MillionDollar is probably the best one, and I'll talk about that briefly. Uniworld's great. It's very similar to MillionDollar, except that it focuses on international companies. So if you're looking for companies that have connections both from the U.S. and another country, probably be a good place to look. Hoover's is a great place for you to learn a little bit more about what the companies do and maybe get some more contact. And then Bulk Career Insider, as I said, they also have a very good, extremely good company directory, and they have some fantastic reviews from an employee's perspective. However, those are usually focused a little bit more towards business fields and finance fields. But all these have resources and options that you guys can use when you're going through. So, D&B MillionDollar is basically a directory. It's kind of like a phone book on steroids. It's not necessarily going to tell you if the company's hiring or not, but it will tell you what are the companies that are in a field and that are also within a certain location. So basically when you go in, you want to go to the advanced search, and you'll be able to see all the different criteria that you can search by. Basically, when you're starting out, I would just focus on location and industry. Don't worry about the other stuff until you start doing some searches and then you really want to narrow down. Industry is probably the more complicated of the two, simply because you have to use what are called industry codes. You can't just type in engineering or finance and find all the jobs that are relevant. You have to use these industry codes, which are, for lack of a better way of describing it, they're kind of like library call numbers, where you have a call number that represents a certain subject, you have a code that represents a certain subject, and then those subfields have a subcode and so on as it gets more specific. So you can find these codes in a couple different places. MillionDollar does have a search function, and it does have a tree function where you can browse through the different codes that are available. You can also go back to my reference page, and on the career guides, the industry-specific career guides, there are a number of codes that have already been pre-selected, they've been picked out, so you can look at those and either pick them or use those to go in and maybe find something that's a little bit more specific. So there are a couple ways you can find the codes, so that way you're not too confused, because they're not really easy to find or understand. Location is pretty easy, it's pretty straightforward. I would suggest searching by metro area simply because it's going to give you sort of a broader range, but that's still a relatively small area. And that's where you're going to find most of the companies are in these metro areas. They're either in or near Philadelphia. They're not going to be in Berks County, unless they're in Reading. So that's something that you can make sure that you can narrow your focus location-wise. They do have they have a new feature too, where they have a zip code radius, where you can actually put in a zip code and say within 20 miles or so. So if you're really specific, you can do that, but I still recommend doing the metro area or higher, just because I think it's easier. And then when you do your search, you'll get a bunch of results, you can click on the companies, you'll get contact information. It actually will provide you with names of people that work there, depending on the size of the company. But sometimes it's a little hard to sort of read through and find relevant individuals. The other thing that's also helpful too is if you do a search at MillionDollar and you find a company that you're interested in, or you know of the company already, you can do a search for them, click on them, and under industry details, you'll actually be able to find the industry code that matches up with that company. So you can use that code then to do another search and find more companies that are very similar to the one company that you're interested in. Hoovers is another great database. How many of you have used Hoovers before? I know a lot of people have at least some familiarity with this. Basically, it's very similar to MillionDollar. It actually basically shares the same data, but it goes into a little bit more detail about what those companies actually do. So in this case, this is AstraZeneca, so if you're interested in pharmaceuticals, this might be helpful. You go in and you see that since it's a large company, it's going to be a lot of information. There's a brief paragraph description about what the company does. You can also look to see how this company is making news, both good and bad, so that can be helpful for you guys. They also go into products and operations sometimes, so you can look at what are the companies actually producing, what are they making, which can be helpful if you're really interested in producing certain products. They also sometimes will provide what services they provide. Also very helpful if you're looking for specific services. Sometimes they'll also give you a list of competitors, which is another great way for you to find companies that might be relevant or be very similar to what you were considering. And probably the most helpful is the people in contacts list. It's very similar to MillionDollar, except you can actually search. You can either browse through or you can do a search for people in certain fields. So there'll be a job function box on the bottom left-hand side, and you can just either browse through and look for human resources, or look for someone in engineering or finance, or whatever position, whatever department you're looking for. And so that way it will actually give you the name, and it will give you their title, as well as the position they have within the department, or what department that they're in. So you can really get a sense for who are the people that you want to speak with that are going to be helpful right now. How many of you are considering academic positions or are considering going into academia and getting a PhD? A few of you? Okay. All right. This is going to be specific for you guys. When you're looking for academic positions, it's a little bit different just because of the environment. First of all, when you're looking for job postings, I would definitely recommend looking first of all at professional associations, the associations for your fields themselves. Just because that's where you're going to find a lot of the postings, because that's where the community comes together and we'll talk about what's there, what's available. I know for me, in library and information science, ALA, and if you want to do something even more specific, ACRL, that's going to be where I can find the jobs that are relevant for people in my field. And so you guys can use that as well. There are also some other general higher ed sites that you can use. Obviously, higheredjobs.com is really helpful. The Chronicle is a great way for you to find academic positions too. And then your department or maybe even your association, professional association, may also recommend some other resources, some other websites you can find help as well. Also, don't be afraid to use your network to just see what's going on in other departments. You may hear through the grapevine that someone may be leaving, someone may be retiring in a department somewhere else, and then you know that there's an opening coming up, so you can reach out to them and start to sort of work with that. So using your network is always very important. Also, it can be very helpful to see what departments are actually doing some of the research that you might be interested in. Obviously each department has a different focus depending on what college they're at. So if you actually do some research, you look at them, for example, if you go into Web of Science, you can actually search by topic, but also search by author, search by school, organization, and see what they're publishing about. See what their research is on. Is it something that matches up with what you're looking at? Or is it something that maybe you find a job that's posted by a certain department, but you see that most of the professors there are publishing in another area of that subject. So it's a good way to sort of do some research and learn about those colleges, learn about those departments and what they're looking for. Okay. So if you have some companies in mind, after you've done some research and maybe you found some universities or departments, or you found some positions, some companies you might be interested in, you can reach out to them. And Ken sort of alluded to this, that it's important to conduct informational interviews, to reach out to them directly. But there are a couple different ways that you can do this. One of the biggest things that I would suggest is to try to have a strategy, a phone strategy, before you even make that call. Whether it be to conduct an informational interview, or whether you're trying to get in touch with someone in human resources. Know what you're going to say beforehand. Don't just call and try to wing it, unless you're very confident that you can wing it. I know I'm not, so I would need to make one. But if you have a plan, and you say, okay, this is what I'm going to say, these are the questions I'm going to ask, this is the information I'm trying to get. That way you can stay focused, stay on task, and get the information without blabbering on or going off on tangents or something like that. There is a calling a company phone script that's on my reference page. It's mainly based for people looking for internships, so you can take it for whatever it's worth. But it's still a good way to look at how you can structure a conversation, you can structure your thoughts, that way you ask appropriate questions. Even if someone says, even if you speak to someone, they say they don't have anything available, it doesn't mean that you still can't, ask for an informational interview, you still can't, stay in touch with them, try to keep yourself sort of in the front of their minds as they're looking for someone that maybe would fill a position later on. So don't necessarily just give up, but obviously think about it in a way that you can back out without just leaving them in the dust. Another thing that you can do obviously is network as you're looking for jobs, looking for companies. Networking is really important, really in any field that you're looking for. It's especially important in fields that maybe have a much higher competition level. If If you're competing with a lot of other people, having those connections can really give you that edge, that foot in the door that you may need to get a job. So there's a couple different, there's obviously a bunch of different ways that you can network, but I'm mainly going to talk about a couple. One of the best ways that you can build your network are through the professional associations that Ken was talking about. One of the ways you can find some professional associations, if you don't already have some in mind already, is the Encyclopedia of Associations database, on the library's website. Here you can do a search by subject. You can either select you never really see it, but there's a list of subjects that you can browse through. You can also just do a keyword search. So if you're looking for a certain subject, certain field, sometimes it can get very, very specific. So it's really a great opportunity for you to find organizations that focus on the exact field, the exact subject that you're looking for. And then they provide links to those associations' websites. You can go on, look at what career information they may have, membership information, what events are they hosting. Sometimes we'll find the national organizations, sometimes the local chapters of those organizations. But it's just a great way to do some research and figure out what are some of those associations, what are some of those organizations do, and how can they be helpful in your search as you're moving forward. And what you basically want to do then is you want to look at what are the events that they're hosting, where can you attend, where can you go and actually meet with people. Sometimes these associations have mentoring programs. Sometimes they'll have a membership directory that you can then use to reach out to other individuals. So it's really just a great way for you to become familiar with the professional community in your field and to try to reach out to them, use those people as contacts, and maybe even potential information interview subjects. Another way that you can obviously sustain your network and build your network is through LinkedIn, kind of what Ken mentioned. One of the best ways that you can use this, though, to find people to either address a cover letter to or to maybe conduct an informational interview with, is by going in, and if you go to there's an advanced search button, you can actually search by company. So if you have some companies in mind, you do your company search, you get your list of whatever, 20 or 30 target companies. Do a search in LinkedIn for those companies and see who you may know that come up. You'd be surprised about who you might have connections with. I know for me, most of my connections are in library science or in higher ed. Yet I have, I think it's now over 300 of those second level connections at Merck alone. And I don't know anyone in biomed or in pharmaceuticals or anything like that. So you can really be surprised about who comes up. It's more about who you know, or it's less about who you know, and it's more about who do they know. And so that's why it's always helpful to go in and just see who you know, do a search because you might find those connections that you can reach out to. And then kind of what Andy and Ken were mentioning before, you want to make sure that you approach those people appropriately. Obviously, if you see someone who's a second level connection that you would like to get in touch with, try to go through your shared connection, the individual that you actually know or are connected with directly. That way, you can make sure that you're not going to be, asking someone, "Hey, I see that you're connected with someone. Would you be able to help me?" When maybe they met once at a conference, maybe that person is they're like the Facebook crazy people that will friend anyone that they even know exists. Those people do exist on LinkedIn, unfortunately. So you always want to make sure you go through your shared connection. Because first of all, they can pretty much act as a reference. They're initiating the contact to try to introduce you guys. And also, it's just a good way to make sure that the person you're reaching out to does actually have that connection, that you're not just reaching out to them out of the blue without them sort of knowing. And just sort of a visual example, I don't know if everyone can see this, but one of the benefits of LinkedIn is you can just sort of see here, this individual has 200 connections, individual connections, but 2 degrees away, so their second level connections are over 20,000. So chances are there's at least one person in those 20,000 that might be able to help you give some advice, or might be able to act as a reference or something like that, or might work with companies you're interested in. So that's why it's important to try to use LinkedIn to reach out to employers, reach out to companies in ways that maybe you didn't even know you had a connection. You can also network obviously on campus. The career fair was mentioned. There are two big ones, one in the fall, one in the spring. The one in the spring is going to be on Wednesday, April 9th. There's also an engineering and health sciences one. I'm not quite sure what the dates are for that.
Engineering is February 20th.
Okay, engineering is February 20th. So those are also good opportunities for you guys to go and meet with employers, learn about what is out there and what's available. So now we're going to talk about finding posted positions, how you can find them. So obviously we talked about for academic jobs, there are certain websites, certain organizations that will have postings. In addition to those, we also have Dragon Jobs, which is a great place for you guys to look for jobs that are posted just for Drexel students. So you can go through, see what's available. Obviously, you can search through it just like you could any other job board to try to find things that are relevant to your major, relevant to your academic experience. So it is a very helpful tool for you guys to use. So I would definitely try to set up your account if you haven't done so already. You can also find posted positions in a couple other places. Vault, as I mentioned before, has its own job board, so that can be helpful. General job search sites like Indeed or Monster.com are helpful. Just understand that you're going to be competing with thousands of other applicants. There are a lot of other people looking at those job sites too. So it's not, I wouldn't exclude it and not use them at all. Just understand that I wouldn't use those exclusively, kind of like what Ken mentioned. Something that's probably a little bit more helpful are the industry-specific job sites. These are usually created by people in the field or either by those organizations, professional associations. So they're going to be a little bit more relevant. You can still find those jobs that have been posted. And they're going to be specific to whatever field you're looking at. So obviously professional associations are probably the best resource for finding jobs. That's great. Career guides, my career guides have a bunch of job boards that are also available. And these are, once again, broken down by major, by industry. So you can look at that, see which ones are relevant. And also check out to see what your college department is doing. I know LeBeau and the old high school, CCI now, they have job boards you can look at. But even if your college department doesn't have their own job board, they might have a listserv. Or they might just keep aware of what's going on, and maybe they can forward some jobs that are being sent around in other listservs or something like that. So it's always important to sort of network to see not necessarily how you can connect with the company, but to just learn about what resources are out there. So basically, one of the biggest things that I want to stress is that when you're looking for a job, you want to try to use as many different strategies as possible. You don't want to just stick with one thing. You don't want to just look for jobs. At the same time, you don't just want to network and use your network. You don't just want to contact companies. You want to try to use all of this because all of those things can open you up to opportunities that maybe weren't there through another avenue. Companies have their own ways of hiring people. Sometimes you have to have a connection, otherwise they will not hire you. And sometimes you have to apply through the job posting before they can even consider you. So if you just pick one or the other, you're going to be excluding yourself from some opportunities that might be available. So if you do all these things, or try to do as many of these things as possible, you can put yourself in a position to take advantage of these opportunities, these openings that might be available. So definitely, as you're going through, kind of like what Ken was mentioning, since it is a full-time job to find a job, you want to try to be doing a little bit of all of this stuff throughout your process, not just, okay, I'm going to focus on networking until, for 2 months and then I'm going to look for jobs. Try to do all of this at the same time because it can be very helpful. So, talk about a few things. Andy's obviously going to go on some things a little bit more in detail a little later. But when you get an interview, obviously you want to make sure you research the company, know as much as you can about that company. Companies love to hear about how great they are and how much you would love to work on their awesome projects. So if you know what those projects are, you know what they're doing, that's going to look very good in an interview. Practicing is also extremely important. Resumes are meant to be stressful. They're meant to sort of put you on the hot seat, see how you handle pressure. So the more you practice, the more you're able to handle that pressure, the more that you're able to handle that situation. And obviously, it's really important to understand the business etiquette, whether it be thank you letters, whether it be how you can follow up with employers, how to dress, how to interact with people in your interview. It really is an important thing for you guys to understand what's appropriate, what's not, so that way you don't make a silly mistake that will cost you a job, even though you're extremely qualified. When you get an offer, there's some resources on salary negotiation, including there's this, we just created or just established a, not necessarily a subscription, but we now have, you can access all of Glassdoor's information. How many of you guys are familiar with Glassdoor? It's a great resource for salary information. It will actually give you exact salaries that people have submitted about what their salaries are and stuff like that. So it's a great way for you to learn about what you can earn in certain metro areas. And before, you would have to log in order to see everything, or you'd have to create an account. Now, if you go through my reference page, you go through the library's website, you'll be able to find all that information there, and without having to log in or anything like that. So that's another great resource for helping students, if you're helping guys. So just some general tips to keep in mind. Obviously, you want to try to be as open-minded and flexible as possible. Understand that your ideal job may not be there or may not be there right now. So it's okay to take a job that's maybe in another location, or it's okay to take a job that's maybe not the exact position that you want, but it's still within the company that you want to work in. Or maybe it's the exact position, but in a different company than you want, or something like that. That's fine, because it's still going to help you reach your long-term career goals. So just understand that some flexibility can definitely be helpful, and it can really open yourselves up to opportunities that are out there. You want to try to use as many job search strategies as possible. Once again, just gives you a way for you to reach out to employers in a bunch of different ways. You want to try to treat this like an extended research project, basically, or like a full-time job. It's something that you need to work on every day. It's not something that you sort of push off to the weekends or Thursday nights between 6 and 7 or something like that. It takes work over time. It's really important to get your name out there. Talk to employers and let them know. Go to career fairs and let them know that you're looking for a job. I want a job. Hand out your business cards. Talk to them, because if they know you're looking for something and something opens up, your name's in the system, they're going to consider you. If you're kind of being passive, waiting for something to open up, you might not be aware of some opportunities that might be out there. And then, learn from the best. Basically, talk with your alumni. Talk with people who have already gotten jobs. Because they've gone through the process, they know what it takes, they know what worked for them within, and then you can get a sense for what's going to work for you. So with that, I'm just going to leave you with some tips that most of you probably can't read because it's kind of small. But with that, do you guys have any questions specifically about the job search, about maybe some of the resources I mentioned? Just numb all you guys' brains.
So wait, what's my presentation?
I want to get to the good stuff. Okay, no, that's fine. Like I said, my contact information's up there, and I'll actually give a shout out to one of my staff members. You can either speak with me to talk about library resources, what's going to be there, how you can use some of these resources, things like that. If you want to speak with maybe some strategies or learn about some other things you can consider for your job search, Nicole Delberto is also a resource for you guys to reach out to. So, any questions? Anything else?